less and less young men today have that drive.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, listen, I think there's only one solution to that problem.
Which is?
We invade Mexico. We invade Mexico now. We invade Mexico now. We flood over the border in blitzkrieg fashion, okay? Not in a fascist fashion. I don't mean that.
Yeah, you use the term blitzkrieg and that conjures Nazism.
No.
I don't know where this is going.
No. And when I say blitzkrieg fashion, I don't mean Nazi uniforms either by blitzkrieg fashion.
Welcome to Backtracking, the show where two old friends revisit influential bands' catalogs track by track. I am J. William Hall.
And I am Dan Fiden. We're taking this journey together, J. William and I, providing context, both historical and personal, on some legendary bands. For Season 2 of Backtracking, we have selected none other than indie darlings American Music Club and their singer-songwriter Mark Eitzel. J. William Hall, we are back. I can't believe it has been so many weeks. 3 weeks. Because we had to split that Invisible Man episode or episodes up into 3 episodes. We went so long in the intro, we had to cut that down so that everything was a little bit more digestible around an hour.
Listen, you know the reason why we went so long in the intro.
Why? Because
you assigned extra assignments. You gave us a side track, side quest.
Yes.
In which we had to find songs about the music industry that, sparked off by Mark Eitzel's solo song, The Big House.
That's right. And how did you feel about that little side quest? I enjoyed that side quest. I feel like there is some potential for an ongoing series of special episodes of Backtracking, perhaps called Sidetracking, where it is a less kind of ongoing, long form, long season, single subject thing and a little bit more of a quick hit, for the fans out there who are like, listen, I don't have time to, listen to 45 episodes on the American Music Club catalog. But I want a quick hit of J. William and his pithy...
I just need that J. William shot of dope.
I know. I can't get through my day. I just can't. I get the shakes if I don't have a J. William hit. Right? What do you think? I think that might be...
That could be something. I do wonder whether our listeners were peeved, just slightly, expecting to hear us diving into Invisible Man, and then we gave all of the preamble, including the side quest, and then we were like, we're cutting it off. Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, you didn't like that. It sounds like you are the proverbial audience member that's complaining about this. I don't want this fucking, this passive-aggressive bullshit, J. William. If you've got a problem with that, I suggest you and I fight right now.
Hey, man, hit me with your best shot, as was so eloquently put in, the early Joan Jett, right?
What? I don't think that was Joan Jett. I think that was Pat Benatar.
Oh, it was Pat Benatar.
Wasn't it Pat Benatar?
Yes, it was Pat Benatar.
And somewhere Joan Jett is, pissed after hearing that. Well, certainly Joan Jett is listening to this episode. Because she's a huge Backtracking fan. Right.
I wonder how often that happened to them, that they got kind of conflated, because they both had kind of a similar image at a similar time.
Oh, yeah. I guess hard rockin' brunette ladies of the 80s. The hard rockin' brunette ladies of the 80s. That sounds like a late night compilation CD that, I might kind of like the, Now that's what I call music. What are some? You remember some of the other ones they used to? This is a concept that people would not remember, but it was like in the 90s.
K-Tel Records.
Yeah, they would advertise. They would do these kind of like TV commercials, and there'd be a 1-800 number, and they'd sell these compilation albums with different themes, like, you know, True Romance, and it would be like, you know, just a random select. It was like a mix.
Yes. It was before there was such a thing as making your own mixtapes. It was like you bought these compilations. I have a really great one called The Hit List. It was a K-Tel collection from like 1981, and it has like The Police and Jay Giles Band and just all of these sort of like new wave, you know, kind of pop acts from that year or whatever. So I miss the you know, and there are so many songs now that when I hear them as part of the like 10-second montage of songs during the K-Tel commercial or whatever, and then you expect to hear the next song, you know.
Yeah, those were very popular. I think it's very strange to realize that, but they are very popular. They were very popular.
That is a remnant of yesteryear.
That's right. Walk down memory lane. Okay, so Jay William, we have to dive into Mark Eitzel, Superhits International, another release that's very similar in spirit to Lovers Leap USA.
Yes, you know, sort of self-released, sort of an unofficial release.
Yeah.
But an entire collection of songs not found elsewhere for the most part.
That's right.
And distributed, you know, selling it by hand as he went on a solo tour for The Invisible Man, I believe.
Yeah. But recorded earlier. Recorded beginning in 99, I believe.
Yeah, so here's the thing about this collection that, you know, I sort of came to realize as I backtracked it. This was basically like an album that this particular group recorded in 1999. So this would have been after Caught in a Trap. But so this group had kind of coalesced, which was Mark Eitzel. You've got Mark Capel. You've got Kristen Sobdich.
Yep.
You've got Eric Gabau. And Peter Strauss on bass, and
that's
you've got
right.
Voodie providing guitar. So it seemed like this kind of like group of players kind of coalesced, and they came up with all of this material, including, you know, a significant chunk of what's on The Invisible Man. And, you know, but they didn't release this collection for whatever reason. Like, they recorded these demos. In fact, I got by a guy named Kevin Inc. at the studio that time forgot. You know, but it's sort of a snapshot in time, I think, basically of what was going on with Eitzel and sort of the cast of characters that was around him in that moment, and who he was recording these kind of like demos with, or you call them demos, or you call it like an album that they were starting but didn't finish for whatever reason. And so he then goes on to do Invisible Man, which includes a lot of these same players, but that's a more polished, like officially released album.
Yeah.
But then he puts this out. He just burns it to CDs and sells it at shows as merch. And it's basically kind of like a pool of songs that this group of players kind of developed together. So it's more cohesive, I think, on the whole, than Lover's Leap, which was sort of like, you know, 2 or 3 sort of distinct recording situations, you know, kind of leftovers from those. This was all kind of like leftovers seemingly from the same era, the same pool of players, I think even the same, it seems like they were all recorded at this same studio. So,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he did some overdubs or whatever, but the thing that's missing from this is, Invisible Man got a lot of attention for the electronic, overdubs and elements. That is entirely absent from this collection. Like, this is just kind of like Eitzel on acoustic guitar. You got Sobditch on the keys. You got Capel doing maybe a different keyboard. You got the drummer. You got the bass. Sometimes Voodie's playing some electric stuff, but sometimes not. And it's very like almost like cabaret sort of style.
Oh, okay. All right. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting the way you describe that. I just at a very high level, since we're into the kind of production and arrangements and everything, I found this album to be incredibly cohesive. I'm going to call it an album. I know that may not really be entirely accurate, but I primarily compared this to Invisible Man, which, you just kind of described why that's an important kind of comparison, certainly chronologically. And then Lover's Leap USA, because I kind of expected a similar level of finishedness to this, given that it was released in the same way and, had very similar kind of approach to the cover and stuff like that. I expected this to be another collection of mostly of demos, right? That didn't feel especially finished and weren't necessarily intended to be entirely cohesive in and amongst themselves, right? Like, there wasn't as much of a focus on making a cohesive album. When I listened to this, I was like, God, this is a releasable album. It feels to me mostly harmonious with itself. I feel like this band has a kind of a characteristic sound that is entirely different from what he does on Invisible Man, which I think is really interesting given that they were created, by many of the same people at roughly the same time. I think that this has this has so much more to do with American Music Club than I think the Eitzel solo albums that kind of surround this.
Yeah, it feels more like a band, like the product of a band versus, Eitzel solo kind of doing it all himself or directing, Yeah, I agree with you. I think it doesn't feel odds and sods. It feels like a lost album.
Yeah.
Not sure what the story is, why, it came out like this or why this one didn't come out and then Invisible Man kind of happened and then this just got kind of, released as sort of a side thing. But, I think for Eitzel fans, it's a must have.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Okay, but Jay William, before we get too deep, we are always inclined to go too deep. People say
we're
not
so
deep
excited.
Enough, never with us. No,
we're so excited to get into it that we can't help ourselves.
We can't help ourselves, but we are going to have to help ourselves for a couple of minutes because you know what time it is. It is time for housekeeping.
It's an annual rite. It's a tradition.
Yeah, it's annual.
It's part of. It's the ritual of listening to Backtracking.
That's right. Everyone looks forward to the housekeeping section, so I don't want to tease them too much. Let's get right into it. So number one, I don't know how many of you out there have already discovered it, but we've taken a huge leap. We've taken a huge leap here at Backtracking.
One small step for Backtracking, but one huge leap also for Backtracking.
Okay, that's excellent. So we have set up a YouTube channel. That is right, everyone. I have enabled through the YouTubes listeners to listen to any of the season 1 or season 2 episodes of Backtracking on youtube.com. How did I do it? Well, apparently there is a way to just enter a podcast feed into YouTube. We don't have, at this stage anyway, we don't have fancy video. We just have an icon of the podcast. It's like the podcast icon. That's all that you can look at for now. Maybe, hey, listen, maybe in the future we will have fancy video. But for now, we don't.
I think it would ruin it.
This is an audio experience, guys, just like listening to Mark Eitzel. So it is available. All you have to do, go over there. It is Backtracking Rocks ROX, like everything else. Just do a quick search for Backtracking Rocks ROX, and you'll be able to find it. Or like Backtracking Rush or Backtracking American Music Club. It will show up. Join the literally 4s of people who have already viewed our videos so far. We are, after 24 hours, at 4 subscribers and tens of views and climbing. Our next destination, my friend, it's the stars. So get on board this rocket ship.
The way it works on the internet is it expands exponentially, right? Like exactly like Bitcoin. So the longer you're in it,
yes,
the more likes you get, the more thumbs ups.
That's right. There's a phrase that we used to use in Buffalo, New York about that. You know what it is?
No.
Stick-to-itiveness. You know what? That's what a Little League football coach might have said to a kid like me, a young undersized offensive guard. Like,
Fido.
Listen, Fido. You don't have much in the physical category. However, you've got stick-to-itiveness, which explains to you why my football career ended my junior year of high school. My stick-to-itiveness was not quite enough to overcome my small size.
Well, it's never too late.
No, it is too late. It is too late for that.
I don't think it is. I think you could resurrect your football career.
Doubtful. All right, so we're going to move on from YouTube. It's an exciting announcement. Second thing that I need to share with you, Jay William, is we got a comment. I just wanted to hit on it and say thank you. Another listener, Spiggy, so delighted by the podcast that he decided to put a little comment in there. Some of the things, he is a fan. He is a fan of AMC. He's been a fan for 25 years.
And we've ruined it for him.
He's been a fan of AMC for longer than that. He hasn't seen Eitzel live in 30 years. He hasn't seen. I'm sorry. I'm just looking. We just got this comment, so I'm just kind of skimming. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. I'm so happy you guys are covering AMC. Spiggy says, I went back and listened to The Restless Stranger for the first time in 25 years so I can follow along, which is exactly what we want the hardcore backtrackers to do. You don't just backtrack. You don't raw dog a backtracking. You got to fucking put that album on. You got to refamiliarize yourself with it. Make some notes of your own if you want. Then kind of journey with us as we backtrack that album. So good on you, Spiggy, for doing that. See, he says, someone once described AMC's early sound as REM meets the Smiths. And he feels that Tell Yourself fits that description completely. He's only known one other AMC fan in his life, and he hasn't seen him for 30 years. So you guys are having the conversations I've always wanted to have. And how, Spiggy, and how. Thanks again for this project, Spiggy. You're welcome. He says it's long overdue that AMC gets their due. We agree. That's why we're doing this. Very exciting. Thank you, Spiggy.
Spiggy.
Great comment. Definitely heartwarming. And then I've got one very exciting AMC related housekeeping item, and then I'm going to preview a housekeeping item for 2 episodes from now when we do housekeeping again. But let me get to the first one. Very exciting news. Instagram, guys, on our Instagram channel, on our Instagram page, whatever, profile, got a new follower named Mark Eitzel. That's right. Mark Eitzel is officially following the Backtracking Rocks account.
Listen, there's an imposter out there who has the Mark Eitzel Bandcamp URL forcing the real Mark Eitzel to go to Mark Eitzel 1. So I think you've been duped.
No.
That is not actually Mr. Eitzel.
No, this is definitely Mr. Eitzel. It is his official Instagram. I may have to reach out to him again and see if he's interested after having consumed almost a full season of Backtracking and clearly having fallen in love with Backtracking, whether he's ready to take the leap. So stay tuned for that, everyone. We're going to try and get him on before the end of the season. And then one final...
No pressure.
One final little note. Literally moments ago, as I stepped away from the computer and was refilling my nephew's gas can for the weed whacker, he's, of course, spending some time here on the farm and helping out with some weed whacking. So as I'm going to get him more gasoline... Who shows up in my notifications for a new email? Who is it, Jay William?
Well, if Mark Eitzel is following us on the gram,
yeah,
it's got to be Voodie.
No, it is not. It is not. It is, however, another member of American Music Club. It is.
What?
Brad Johnson. I have not read the email yet. But it's long. It is a long email. I'm going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and we will discuss it in next week's housekeeping. I think this is very exciting, guys. They obviously realize that after this YouTube launch, we're headed to the moon, so they're getting on board. Jay William, do you have anything you need to discuss?
Yes, I have an item of housekeeping for possibly the first time ever.
Okay, excellent.
Speaking of early members of AMC.
Yes.
Greg Bunnell.
Yes.
Who was a special guest on Backtracking earlier in season 2. He is in a band here in Columbus, Ohio called Moviola.
Yes, I've heard of Moviola. Terrific band.
They've been around for 25, 30 years. They are about to release their 11th album.
Wow.
On Dromedary Records. It's called Earthbound. But there is the first single off of the album just came out the other day. It's called Slage Wave. And I believe it was written and is sung by Mr. Greg Bunnell.
Wow. Maybe we can sneak in a clip of the new single.
Sneak in a clip. Get a little clip in there.
All right, here's the clip.
You're a wage slave from the cradle to your grave. You don't work, you don't get paid, you don't get nothing.
Amazing. Moviola, congratulations. But the real congratulations, of course, is for music fans everywhere who are going to go out and get that new album. Now, Jay William.
Yes.
I seem to recall getting a Moviola album into the WDUB radio station when, of course, we were luminaries there.
Yes,
we would get promo
heyday.
CDs. Yeah, we would get some promo CDs, and I distinctly recall, I could be wrong about this, but I seem to remember Moviola showing up back in those days. Is that possible? In the
I believe it is possible. I think they date back to 95 or so.
Yeah, so it probably would have been maybe a debut album or something. But yeah, I seem to remember that right there in the radio station. So happy to see them continuing to rock.
Right.
Because
local legends.
It is a lifetime commitment. Okay, so Jay William, is it time for us to get back to Mark Eitzel Superhits International? We already delved in a little bit. Yeah, okay. So the basics before we get into it again. The basics. It was released, I don't have a date. We know that it was distributed in 2001, but I don't have an actual hard date for like a quote unquote release for this. Do you?
I do not, but I know that there is that website out there that documents live performances, and we know that he was selling these at live shows in 2001. So, you know, we could have gone a step further. We could have done our research, but both of us failed to do the proper research to get the damn date.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I also... mostly because I was lazy, I do not have a runtime for this album. Were you able to find that? I found a review that listed it as over 77 minutes. But based on my experience, kind of back of the envelope, it's much closer to about 50 minutes.
No, no. It's 10 songs. They're all in the like 2.5 to 4.5 range.
Yeah.
It's not a super long album. I'm willing to bet that it would fit in its entirety on one side of a 90-minute cassette.
Well, I think that's possible, but I do wonder if there may be an extended version of this album floating around. There was a review that I read, again, on AllMusic that seemed to intimate there may have been.
Okay, so there was another release that was put out. It was a Mark Eitzel like solo compilation. I don't know if it was just like a promo thing put out in like 2004, and the title of that is Superhits International. I just stumbled across that today, and it does have like 18 songs or something on it. So that is probably, I don't know why they did that. I mean, I guess, you know, this title wasn't officially put out there or published or whatever because it was just self-distributed, and so they used it for this compilation later. But anywho, this particular collection, 10 songs, probably about 45 minutes, feels like an album.
It definitely feels like an album. So we are, if there is any confusion, we are going to be covering the 10-track version of this that begins with The Man with the Hole in His Foot and ends with Tomorrow. We are only covering those 10 songs. If there are variations or there are releases out there that we're not aware of, we're sorry. This is what we're doing. Okay, so as we've already discussed, Jay William, this is another example of Eitzel doing the hand-drawn covers. There are variations in this cover. I want you to go deep and tell us all about it.
Well, I believe that these covers were drawn not just by Eitzel, but they're also some of them are by Voodie, apparently.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And I have not done an extensive search to track down the different variations, but I've seen at least 2. And they're just like a Sharpie on a square of white paper doodle kind of thing. And that's all I can tell you.
Yeah, there is, at least on Discogs, there are a number of images that are included here.
I see it.
My favorite, I will tell you, my favorite of them is, it says, U2 sings the songs of Mark Eitzel, above a very strange scribble. But yeah, there's quite a bit of variation. They all have that Lovers Leap USA feel. They're perhaps even more crude than those, but definitely has that kind of punk rock, homemade, DIY, as we used to say back in the Gen X heyday vibe.
I still say that. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I think it's time we can get back into the kind of production a little bit before we go track by track here. So we were talking a little bit about, before we kind of backtracked to the housekeeping section, we were talking about your impression of this album versus mine. You had said that you felt like this had a cabaret feel. I would disagree with that. I feel like this is a primarily country-tinged raw rock record that feels to me, when I think about the kind of span of Eitzel and American Music Club's output, this feels to me most like an AMC album of anything Eitzel's done solo, without a doubt. I mean, I feel like this is a releasable album. I don't want to spoil it. I feel like it's a pretty good album. I don't think it would need much work to kind of level it up to where, it would need to be in order for it to be a quote unquote like official release. And I also really felt like, for some reason on this album, that this reminded me most of kind of a core AMC album.
Yeah, I agree that it feels like the work of a band, and it feels like this band does a similar thing for Eitzel that AMC does, which we've discussed, where they kind of provide this sort of like cinematic backing that sort of rises and falls with his songs, or provides some kind of like soundscape, in which his songs live. And, this particular group that does Superhits, it's more keyboard heavy. Like, it is. I see Kristen Sobditch credited with the Wurlitzer organ, and then Mark Capel on organ. So it's like you got this, and most of the songs I feel like do have kind of like at least, 2 layers of keyboards kind of going on. And that sort of provides the role that I think of like as pedal steel provided like late in AMC, But having said that, there is the one like really overt country song with a pedal steel, and I don't know who plays that because I couldn't find that credit on here. Well, I don't know that. I mean, it was Caffin who was the pedal steel guy in AMC.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I guess I suppose. I guess we'll never know. But so you really think there was only one song that was kind of pronounced? Maybe not pronounced, but like it really felt to me like there was a lot of country inflected songwriting on this one, and it wasn't just the one song that
no. I agree, country inflected, but I thought there was only the one song that like really like they made it, sound Nashville, country kind of style.
Yeah.
Everything else they kind of do with sort of like it's more of the organ interplay, going on that I think kind of sets a lot of the tones and stuff.
It's interesting to me that I guess as we go through the catalog and get into kind of AMC Mark II, it's interesting to me that this, over the course of this and Invisible Man, there is this band more or less coalescing for Eitzel. But it just feels so kind of cleanly articulated to me. I don't know. I find it surprising that this iteration of, this project didn't go further, and he didn't release this album. I'm frankly pretty surprised. I think this album is at least as releasable as West.
Well, good news for our listeners. This album is available at Mark Eitzel's Bandcamp, markeitzel1.bandcamp.com. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. It's worth your time. One thing I wanted to point out that in my research, I discovered something called Stylus Magazines, and there was an article on there called Playing God, Mark Eitzel, the Invisible Man. And in this article, a gentleman, the author's name is Scott McKeating. He takes a stab at taking all of the tracks from Superhits and from Invisible Man and making a single album containing tracks from both. like what he feels like is like the best version. And I have to say, like reading through so he is retracking before that was really a thing. And I kind of agree with what he said. And it's about evenly split, like six or seven songs from each that he rearranges into a single album. And I think that the version he puts together, it almost, it really does, like this group of people, it sounds like this is like the best of that particular incarnation of Eitzel's backing band.
I'll have to check that out. Check out that track listing. I will say that I didn't feel upon listening to this album overall that its closest kinship was with Invisible Man. I thought its closest kinship was with the 4 songs in the middle of Lovers Leap USA that were recorded by, the band.
The New York indie guys, as we keep calling them.
That's right. Right. I feel like these songs had much more to do with that than Invisible Man. Not that the songwriting was somehow incompatible or all that different, but I think that the production, kind of the musical approach that he took on Invisible Man is so it's so distinct from what he does on this album that I wouldn't want to commingle those two. I really feel like the Invisible Man in some ways works well as like, oh, that's his David Gray album, which is probably coming across as a little bit more mean than it's intended to be. That was his album.
What do you have against David Gray? This is the second episode that you've sneered, as you said his name.
I'm not sneering at David Gray. I think he's terrific. I have no issue with him. But I'm saying, like, listen, I think that this is the album where Eitzel went in that direction. I think he executed it pretty well. I am not certain that he does not stick with that direction. He may. I haven't heard these later albums. Maybe sticks with it. But my guess is that he does not. This is kind of a one-off thing, and I like Invisible Man existing as a little bit of a one-off thing. This is not like that. This really feels like a very organic rock album to me.
Well, you say that is a one-off, but to this point, each of his albums have been a one-off.
Well, that's true. In the solo career, that's a really good point.
Yeah, like he's had a different sort of like cast of players around him for each one. And, and I think that is almost what I'm enjoying, or that's like one of the main things I'm enjoying through this experience is sort of like hearing him presented in all these different contexts, that like slightly shift depending on which players are involved.
Yeah, I do wonder if his the quote unquote official releases are so aesthetically distinct from AMC, partially because he felt like he wanted to establish that difference. He didn't. I wonder if maybe he really felt like, gosh, when I'm, now that I'm not in AMC, I don't want my albums to just sound like AMC light. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Well, interesting. All right. Well, it seems like we're ready to dig into it. I think we're ready to dig into it.
I think so.
Okay. Well, the first track, again, we're going to break this up into 2 episodes. There is not a vinyl version of this.
At least.
But we're gonna impose a vinyl kind of concept onto this. So starting side A, track 1, it is The Man with the Hole in His Foot, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Let's go.
Man with the hole in his foot that he put there so no life would get took. Sensed himself to limp and stumble, and all his confessions mumble.
All right, Jay William. Lyrics. What do you think of this one?
Well, okay, so if you were a hardcore Mark Eitzel fan back in this era, I'm not sure what the timing was, But off of The Invisible Man, there was one single released by Matador, which was Proclaim Your Joy. Proclaim Your
Joy.
And right. So in one version of it, like, I don't know if it was the 45 or what, The Man with the Hole in His Foot was the B-side.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't know if it was the same exact recording or not. But anyway, so it's possible that people picking up this CD might be like a little familiar with that song if they happen to have that single. So lyrics, this song, I believe, is, to me, it read as it's about somebody who sort of chooses to be a martyr, who sort of chooses to be miserable, like who always, you know, like looks on the dark side of things or the downside of things. And so I saw it as like sort of quasi, you know, making fun of himself a little bit, or his image at least.
Yeah. Okay. That's not how I took it, but I like that interpretation. I have to say, I like that interpretation. I would agree with the general kind of thrust of what you're saying. I really found, I kind of got hung up on Airliners in Trouble, the last line of the first verse, and obsess about, quote, airliners in trouble. And I wondered, you know, if this was, I'm guessing it probably wasn't, but I did, because it was a 2001 release, I was wondering if somehow or another that is a 9/11 thing. Perhaps it's not. If these songs were recorded in 99, then I guess it definitely isn't. But for some reason that like stuck in my head, and I was like, why? I don't understand that line. And then I was like, well, you know, if it's not that, what is the significance of that line? Maybe that's just kind of a placeholder. If this is really kind of a demo album, maybe this is a placeholder lyric that he just threw in there randomly. I don't know, but that line in particular really kind of hung me up.
I guess I read that line just as like, you know, there are people out there who are obsessed with like airline crashes. And they, you know, you can hunt down like cockpit transcripts, you know, from all, you know, there's like all these websites that cover every airline crash, and people are obsessed with them. And so I saw that as him just saying like, that's another trait of this person that he's describing in the lyrics, the man with a hole in his foot. You know, he obsesses about airline crashes or whatever. That's sort of what I got from it. Like, you know, always looking on the dark side, the downside.
Yeah. All right. I get that. I may have been going on some wild goose chases there. So do you want to talk about the music here? I have to say, one of the things that perhaps convinced me that this was, or set the tone for me that this was a very kind of country inflected album, is once again, we're starting with a waltz. And I think it's just so unusual to hear a kind of a waltz time song generally in pop music or rock music. And I think it frequently, you know, much more common in kind of classic country and Western. So right off the bat, I kind of had this country vibe due to this waltz time on this song.
I guess I read it less as overtly country as like, it's the sound of that organ. I don't know if that's the Wurlitzer, but like it has this old timey kind of quality to it that I think like you know, it is like a dusty saloon type of sort of sound, and so it's like I see it as like sort of like a different Americana-ish kind of. A
bit organ grindery, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like there's an organ grindery vibe there. Yeah, I would agree.
The carnival, you know, like, I thought of like a cabaret, like, you know, it's like just this little, precious little group,
Yeah. I love that Wurlitzer though as well, and I think that the use of the organ across this album and kind of the keyboards across this album, Kristen Sabdich, it's a really interesting differentiator from kind of AMC post California. Really, you don't get much keyboard really until you get to Mercury, where they kind of sideline the pedal steel in favor of keyboard quite a bit. But it's interesting. I really like how that shifts the feel of this. It feels akin to AMC to me, but not exactly AMC, which I do like.
Yeah.
Another AMC similarity that I had to point out, there is no real chorus in this song, no traditional chorus. It's really kind of 3 verses, but somehow that structure and the way they've crafted that into a song feels more AMC to me than almost anything else that he's done since the solo career really began with 60 Watt Silver Lining. And then obviously we've got a Voodie guitar freak out over the back half of this song that clearly can be a little evocative of AMC.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's what sonically took me to AMC at the end, is because there's actually 2 sections, like we'll call them a bridge, where they build up, the introduction of Voodie's crazy electric guitar. And I mean, up to this point, the song has been very sort of like gentle and a little bit like pa pa. And then suddenly there's this crazy guitar, and then it all drops out and kind of like goes back down, but then it builds up again, and this time it goes deeper and longer. And I mean, this is probably the biggest guitar freak out that we've heard from Voodie.
Yeah, I would agree. But it's nice to hear. I mean, it really gives a very it's just the combination of those vibes that somehow he represents, and I think AMC represents it. I don't know. It's nice to hear again.
He always brings an edge to the proceedings,
Yeah.
Which, we talk about Eitzel's solo albums are generally more quieter and generally more in a step of like adult kind of contemporary sort of vibe. But then you get a Voodie guitar freak out, and that like brings it right back over, to the edge of it. So kudos to Mr. Voodie.
Yeah, total kudos. And now the only criticism I'm going to make, I have to make it. It's minor, but it is a pet peeve of mine. Feels to me like a bit of a cop-out fade out on this one. And this is something I'm going to mention a couple of times on this album. This is not something that I would say that AMC or Eitzel are guilty of across their catalog. Certainly to the same level of Rush. That's a criticism that I raised about many of the Rush songs, many of the Rush albums. Not something that really has been present for most of AMC's work or Eitzel's work, but I do think there are a couple of culprits on this album.
Hey, go easy, because these were demos, right? These were not, as far as we know.
I just don't if these are I will say, if these are demos, these are incredibly well executed, kind of fleshed out demos. I just think that the difference in I don't want to say quality, the difference in completeness or finishedness, I guess, when I listen to this album compared to Lovers Leap USA, which again is kind of the comparison I came into my listening primarily thinking about, is just huge. If somebody passed me these demos, I'd say like, God, there's not a lot of additional, juice that needs to be squeezed from this.
Well, that's why it's curious to me if the songs from Invisible Man that feature more or less the same band is the only difference sonically, that Eitzel then also layered some kind of electronic, element, and that made it sound different, or were those distinct in different sessions than these?
Yeah.
Or, we don't know. We don't have definitive evidence. If anybody out there knows, please leave a comment.
I know. Well, hopefully they will. All right. So anything else we need to discuss on this one, or shall we move on?
You know, I just want to say that, you know, this one builds to a really big emotional sort of climactic thing where, you know, and I think that also has a flash of that old AMC kind of energy. So anyway, let's move on.
It does. You hear that energy. You hear Eitzel in that kind of high drama performance space a couple of times on this album, and it's something I loved. I love to see it or hear it. Okay, so next song, one little point of order here on Mark Eitzel's Bandcamp. This is listed as 000 miles. Elsewhere, it is listed as 1,000 miles.
Right.
In the song, he refers to 1,000 miles. I am not certain exactly the title, but I'm going to say it is 1,000 miles. Jay William, it is 3 minutes and 43 seconds. Let's listen.
Honestly, I prefer to think of it as 000 miles. Just saying.
Well, that's fine. You can think of it that way, but I'm going to think of it as 1,000 miles. Let's go.
Drive another 1,000 miles, 'cause you have no other home.
Okay, so I want to talk about the lyrics first. So there are a few areas of this album where there were lyrical and musical things that really, really evoked earlier AMC songs for me when I listened to them. In this song, the use of the lyrics, there is a similarity to me in this song and the hopes and dreams that are discussed in the hopes and dreams of Heaven's 10,000 Whores. It is a minor thing for me, but it somehow popped into my head. I felt like this is kind of a Lost on the Road song. This is a little bit of a Jaded with the Music Biz song, at least in my interpretation. It's very much like, you know, the road is fucking hard, kind of a type song, if you know what I mean. And there is a jadedness in here that I think comes through when he talks about Jesus burn the stars out of my eyes. I just kind of like, I almost read this entire album or these entire lyrics as this kind of quasi prayer of Eitzel to you know, Jesus or some God to dispel him of his naive dreams about the music industry and instead let him be satisfied with the somewhat less dramatic reality of his life in the music industry.
You know, at one point, I was also going down that sort of interpretation of, you know, sort of the life of a touring musician and just this endless kind of treadmill of, you know, stuff that he was not enjoying. But, you know, I started to interpret it a little more broadly than that. And by the end, I had convinced myself that this song could almost be sung from the perspective of anybody who feels sort of marginalized or, you know, demoralized, you know, and it's like they're trying to reconcile why God would treat them so poorly, you know? So I'm thinking like marginalized groups, people, religious, political, whatever. And, you know, it's a cry out like, why has Jesus forgotten me? Do you think?
Yeah,
do you think I'm leaning too hard into the religious imagery here?
I think that perhaps I think you could certainly abstract it to that. And I think that read is completely valid. I can see where you get that. I think it works equally well. I think I just probably interpreted it a little bit more literally. And again, I may have just been, I don't know. I definitely felt like there were musical similarities to Hopes and Dreams off Mercury. That chased me down. That like sent me down this, I don't know, path with the lyrics where I was thinking about the time in AMC. Then I don't know. I went down a whole path, and it's funny. I feel like you've frequently on other albums have brought up that, lyrics, you interpret lyrics as Eitzel writing about his place in the music industry, and I've frequently had a different read. It seems here
it's only correct. It's only correct when I think it's
I'm
that
just saying.
way.
I just wanted to subtly point out the hypocrisy of your interpretation of these lyrics, Jay William. That's what I'm all about.
Mr. Eitzel has already sung about his issues with the music industry. He's on to higher level shit at this point.
Bigger issues. All right, fair enough. But I will say that like this is the first in my notes. This is the song where I'm like, gosh, this is not demo-y, this album. This does not strike me as demo-y. This really feels like the song is pretty well fleshed out. There's a really there is a kind of articulated chorus in here that's pretty good in a way that I don't feel like exists in many of the songs off of Lover's Leap USA. I'm probably just comparing it too much to Lover's Leap USA and not enough to The Invisible Man, but that, that's the path I went down.
So the only thing I want to say about that is that I agree with you that this sounds like the band has developed parts for the most part. My only quibble is that I feel like the drums on this song and on a couple others feel a little tentative, like maybe the drummer had just learned the song and was just laying down a basic beat that they could like do the full arrangement over.
Yeah.
That's my only quibble, but I agree with you. This does not feel like a tossed off, I'm not going to finish this song. This feels like a song that is fully written, fleshed out, like here's the demo or whatever this was intended to be. But they do fade out on the jam.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, all right. That fair enough.
It's another fade out on the jam, right?
It is a fade out on the jam. There's a lot of fade outs on here. I don't love that. This was not one of the ones that really bugged me, I'll say, but there are a few on here, and I will point them out. There is no question about that. Now, listen. Should we move on to Highway 40? This is one that I really want to talk about.
Let's do it.
All right. Highway 40, 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Let's give it a listen.
Well, some people only want to waste your time by telling you you'll never get far. But when you're lost in the mystery of Highway 40, you could tell the cops you were following a star.
Okay, so Jay William, U.S. Highway 40, if in fact we're talking about U.S. Highway 40, goes east-west through quite a big stretch of Middle America. Kind of stretches from, look to me when I did a little bit of research, Ohio-ish area out towards Colorado.
Yes, I believe it. Well, I don't know if it goes through Ohio. Does it? Does it go through Ohio?
I'm not sure. I just saw that. I just looked at a map, high level, and it looked like it's roughly right. Midwest heads through.
Yeah. It run. I have it running from Barstow, California, to Wilmington, North Carolina. Is
wow.
What my
okay,
research revealed. It is a long highway. The segment that goes through California is sometimes called the Needles Freeway.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes, the Needles Freeway.
Well, because it goes through Needles. There is a town called Needles. It's either in California or Nevada.
Okay.
So, well, yeah, just to set the scenario a little bit. I found this to be a very interesting, very, very relatable scene of someone headed west. Might have been east. I don't think it really matters, but I just imagine them kind of heading west through. I'm going to overgeneralize here, through evangelical middle America. And it isn't so much an experience that I think Eitzel is describing literally. I think he's kind of describing this sense of what one might encounter when driving around America, especially, you know, in an existence like Eitzel has probably had, where, you know, he has these big dreams of kind of going to, you know, the big city and being a famous musician. He has, you know, progressive views on this, that, and the other thing. And certainly there is the potential for chafing at the beliefs of people that you might encounter, you know, outside of the San Francisco bubble, as it were. That was really the sense that I had from these lyrics. But Jay William, what I wanted to kind of point out more than that was a more general sense that Eitzel is at this point in his career becoming substantially more political.
Yes, definitely. This song certainly has a political viewpoint. I see it as kind of like a takedown of, homophobia, like that, was certainly still very mainstream, at the time that this song was written. And so I saw it as like he's on Highway 40, maybe with his partner, and it's beautiful and they're commenting on that. But at the same time, they realize they're kind of surrounded by, this kind of homophobia that's sort of everywhere. So, but that in and of itself is a political viewpoint, and he sings very directly about it, I think, in this song.
Yeah, he certainly does. And I think there are obviously, lots of good reasons why he may becoming more political at this point in his career. But I just think it's interesting because there are not very many, or maybe any, I'm just kind of saying that off the top of my head, songs in the AMC catalog pre-San Francisco that I think of as political, really, in any way. I think he evolves in a very general sense from, in the early career, writing really primarily about himself, his own feelings in that moment, and then feelings from kind of his childhood and upbringing. Then he evolves more into I guess this is a bit overly broad way to say it, kind of a poet of the, Bukowski type. He paints pictures of people that are lost in different ways. Sometimes they're himself, that are on the outskirts of society. But again, doesn't really say anything super political, I don't think. And then it feels like kind of around nowish in his career, there are suddenly very, very overtly political songs that pop up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you have to think about what was going on politically in the country at that time. This was sort of the, we're coming out of the Clinton years, and there's the whole, Newt Gingrich coalition that, has pulled in the religious right and, that sort of moralistic, homophobic, all of that stuff sort of became kind of like part of the mainstream discourse. Whereas I feel like it seemed like maybe earlier in the 90s that, that wasn't, I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing that it has to do with that. It has to do with, the 2000 election. And, I think that after 9/11, the country certainly took a hard right turn. And I think that caused a reaction, from a lot of artists and songwriters. So, yeah, I mean, he is starting to kind of get into this stuff a little bit more and his particular views on these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. So should we talk about the music here? Because I think this is one of the more remarkable songs on the album. I really like this album. I love the chorus in this song, or what I'm kind of thinking of as the chorus. And it just feels to me like this is kind of Eitzel. This is an Eitzel acoustic performance done in a very kind of classic, quote unquote, classic AMC way with really nice, accompaniment. I just thought this was super well executed. My only complaint here is the fade out.
Oh, is it another fade out cop out?
In my notes, I mark this as a cop out fade out. I mark this one as a cop out fade out.
So a couple of things. One is I like that on this collection. So Highway 40 immediately calls to mind Highway 5. So it's like this is his second Highway song,
That's right.
And I thought it was similar because the first song on this, the man with the hole in his foot, is almost feels like a throwback to from the last album opening track.
The boy with the hammer in a paper bag.
Yes, the boy with the hammer. So, I just think that it's interesting that he's starting to sort of like self-reference things a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one, a couple, like you can tell that this one is still more demo-ish because his voice actually kind of cracks and stuff a little bit here and there on this one. Like it sounds like, he didn't have a nailed take for it. And I thought that the feel of this one, like especially when the strummy guitar gets in there, it almost feels like California era AMC, cause it feels like Western Sky, like sort of acoustic guitar strumming led.
Yeah, exactly.
Thing, which he hasn't done a lot of that in his solo career. But again, the drums on this one, to me, for some reason, they sound tentative. And I also don't know, I started to wonder, maybe, that he had a live drummer sort of play something and then he just looped it or something.
Yeah. I had a similar it sounds more comment.
Like a metronome at times,
Yeah, I found that, throughout this album, I didn't kind of cover it when we were doing the overall. I found the drums, I didn't find them problematic. I had the same question. How much of this is live? How much were loops? How much did he just cut up some of what the drummer did and kind of make parts out of it? But almost overall, I felt like the drums are not mixed particularly well. They're too low in the mix.
Yeah, they sound a little low, like backgroundy,
Yeah, and that's probably the most demo-y thing about the album, in my opinion. Now, there are a couple of songs that I'll point out along the way where I feel like that very low drum, having the drums in the mix like very, very low, creates a really interesting sound that I in some places really liked, but I had a very similar reaction to you.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to move on past Highway 40?
Let's get to the end of Highway 40.
Okay, well then, one thing we're going to have to do, we're going to have to listen to Hold Me. It is 4 minutes and 20 seconds, everybody, so blaze it up. Let's go.
No, I'll never be a rich man. I know my life won't amount to much, but you never promised me salvation. Maybe that's why I love you so much.
Okay, Jay William, I don't want to be, I don't want to overblow this, okay? But I think this is a perfect country song. And I think the first 4 lines of these lyrics are perfect country song lyrics. I know I'll never be a rich man. I know my life will never amount to much, but you never promised me salvation. Maybe that's why I love you so much. I just has there ever been a more perfect set of opening lyrics to a wonderful little country tune?
I agree with you. This is straight up straightforward, conventional country pop, but more old school, more like it feels like a 70s. Like I could see this, or I could hear this on the soundtrack of Nashville, the Altman movie or whatever. It's like this has that kind of like old school vibe, largely driven by the very prominent pedal steel, which is a very traditional like country western pedal steel kind of playing. Who is it? Who's the player? Is it Bruce? Is it Voody? Is it some other unknown pedal steel player?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's lovely. I just have to say, I think lyrically, this is a perfectly simple, kind of sad, but mostly wistful love song. Mm-hmm. And then just musically, it's just, God, the pedal steel, you already mentioned it. There's a bridge in this song that I think is great. It's a great chorus. It's a chorus that you can remember. This is just like a perfect little gem. And the fact that this is sitting here on this oddball album, to me, kind of drives me a little bit crazy. I love this song.
If you are a younger country starlet who has crossover potential to pop stardom, superstardom, Tay-Tay, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at artists like Angel Olsen. You need to grab this song with both hands, record your own version of it, send it up the charts, get Mr. Eitzel his payday.
Yeah.
This song should be a smash country hit.
Yeah. I'm more of like Sierra Farrell, why don't you grab this one? So many options here. But I agree.
It actually made me wonder. I was like, I wonder if he was recording some of this stuff with sort of the hope of selling some of these songs.
Well, listen, I that is definitely, I have to say, there's so many things that I would love to have a conversation with Eitzel about, but this topic just generally is one of them. It's come up many times as we've kind of gone through this season. There are a number of songs in the catalog that feel to me as though they totally would be, perfect for someone like that, the kinds of people that we're talking about to record. I'm guessing that over the years, someone with his notoriety as a songwriter must have been approached. Maybe not, but I'd find it very surprising if he was never approached by people interested in doing that, and I just wonder why it never happened.
Well, I'm looking over the lyrics now, and it's like, I think 90% of them, could be sung by another country singer, but then you have things like, look and see how the sirens and the signs all correspond when you're on the way to the emergency room. And they're giving you all this great sedation, but really you just want someone. Last line notwithstanding, but sometimes it's like the imagery is perhaps not what a young Nashville up and coming, country starlet wants to sing about.
Well, listen, I think that we need to make this happen.
There's a market there. There's an opening for some group of indie country luminaries to do do a compilation album or something of AMC like country covers.
Yeah.
You've got plenty of material to work with, this being a prime example.
Yeah, for sure. And a deep cut here, so I love it.
Very deep.
All right, is there anything else we want to talk about this one? I feel like we're both kind of on the same page. This is just a perfect little gem. I don't have a lot of criticisms or kind of negative thoughts about this one. I just think this is, the fact that I haven't heard this song until now is my biggest complaint. Honestly, I think this should have been on an album that I heard, but that's my fault. I could have listened to this one and I just didn't do it. So shame on me.
You dropped the ball.
I did drop the ball. All right, are we ready to cover the last song on this side, Jay William? It is Charm School. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
3 minutes, 14 seconds. Let's go.
So here's to those that can't pretend, not looking for no reward. Here's to those that go to sleep, hoping to see the Lord.
Okay, Jay William, it is your time to shine. Dig deep into these lyrics. I know that you're going to.
So I read this as sort of a takedown of right-wing religious hypocrisy, attacks on gay marriage and that type of thing, and he's saying he's raising a toast. Here's to those who blankety blank. And I think he's basically speaking to people who recognize that love is love. And I think that there's also a religious component in here as well. Like, I think he's almost saying hats off to people who both, believe in God and believe that God loves everyone equally.
Yeah, I would say that I'm largely in the same place on these lyrics. I did feel, I got this impression like, oh, there must be, this is some kind of a gay marriage thing in here. So I tried to refresh myself on what was going on politically with that at this time. And yes, the first civil union legislation was passed, I believe, in Vermont in I want to say 99 or 98.
Okay.
So it was right around this time that this was really becoming a conversation in the country.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
And so I don't think you're wrong about that. And I had a very similar take on these lyrics.
Now the one thing I don't totally know is, the title of the song, Charm School. And so, Charm School is kind of like this, I think of it as this like old fashioned, like wealthy East Coast, like you send your rich little children to charm school to learn how to be mannered and to, or whatever. And so I'm not sure, like, like the one message combined with the charm school metaphor, I don't know exactly how that fits together.
Yeah. The charm school thing wasn't entirely, that's not perfectly clear to me either. But I do think the rest of the lyrics are this, kind of nice, like simultaneous fuck you to the people who don't approve of what it is that Eitzel is talking about. But also this celebration of like, hey, we're going to do it anyway. They don't really know us. They don't really care about us. Let's just kind of do it and enjoy ourselves and fuck them for trying to rain on our parade. It's kind of the feel that I got from this one. But the music, Jay William.
Yeah.
The music, it is so catchy, so poppy.
Right. Yes. I actually get sort of like an 80s, almost new wave kind of vibe from this. It has like a vaguely dancey sort of feel to it. Very slinky and it's got this kind of like interesting back and forth on the chords that kind of feel a little discordant, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's that chunka guitar, that kind of like that. I don't know what is that? That's kind of like a palm muted wah wah kind of thing. That's happening.
You're just kind of getting a little ching, ching, like that thing on the chorus. Very well placed, like very catchy. It reminds me a little bit of Niles Rodgers and Chic. Like it's got that kind of feel to it. And I think his vocal sounds great. on this one. Like the singing is really strong, and he works his way up into like the higher registers later in the song. It's a very strong closer for side one, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a great closer. I have to say, one of the things that was a surprise on here, but that I loved, is how he goes into a la 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 at the end of the song, right? That's not something that you hear Eitzel do, I don't think, anywhere in the catalog, where he kind of just sings la 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 to his own melody. I think he generally is a more lyrically driven songwriter than musically driven songwriter. That may be I may be casting too large a net there, but that's my sense generally. And so this la 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 thing at the end really just kind of struck me funny, but I really liked it. It's just so unusual for him.
True. Usually it feels like maybe he has too many lyrics and is having trouble cutting them down versus not having enough and having to ad lib or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I like it, like it adds to the overall relaxed kind of vibe,
lightness,
of the song or the album, or just the approach to the album. So we're calling it an album. It's demos, right?
Now, this is the song that I felt most, that I felt the drum weirdness that you described earlier hit me most acutely. It almost feels to me, and I'm not certain, but it feels to me as though there are no drums in this song. There's no drum set being played. Or if it is, it's very low in the mix and kind of hard to differentiate, which on a song that has that chunka guitar and this bouncy poppiness felt to me like a really strange choice, not having drums on this one. Like this one, of all the songs, I was like, yeah, you kind of want a drum part on here.
I mean, you and I both play the drums. Yeah. And so I think we have these opinions, and like I'm always more in favor of a drum part that feels locked in with the song, and follows, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so I'm not as big a fan of like loops per se, but if he is using loops here, and same with Invisible Man, like the actual sounds that he's choosing sound good. Like they sound like real drums. They don't sound like electronic blips. You know what I mean? And maybe he's just, like you said earlier, like cutting up, like the drummer came in and laid down some stuff and then he just took sections and built parts out of it or whatever. The drums themselves sound good, but the part just sounds a little sort of like metronome, at times. It doesn't rise and fall with the song.
Yeah, agreed. Well, all right, Jay William, can you even believe that we're already to the end of side A?
What?
Yeah, I can't believe it, but we are. It is time for us to bid adieu to our many friends and fans.
To you, and you, and you, and you, and you.
What is that? Oh, are you singing?
Come on. Sound of music. I'm singing.
Of course. Yeah, look at you.
Think
I love it.
You think Mark Eitzel's the only one who can sing out there? I got a...
Yeah. All right. So, listen. Get in touch with us. Do it on email, backtrackingrocks@gmail.com. Do it on Instagram @backtrackingrocksrox. Do it on Twitter @backtrackingrocksrox. Do it on Reddit, the American Music Club subreddit. Do it on YouTube. You can comment, you can subscribe, you can share, you can rate. You can do all the shit that YouTube does, but you can do it for us.
There are so many different ways through which you can communicate with us. I'm worried about our listeners being overwhelmed with the options.
No.
I personally feel extremely stressed out when I hear all the different ways that we can be contacted.
No. It is a buffet of options for you to support us through your emails, through your reviews, through your sharing, through all of that stuff. I want you to just cruise around that buffet as though you're in Las Vegas. You're at the Bellagio. You paid your $60 for the all-you-can-eat. Maybe you've got a little bit of a hangover. It's about 11 a.m., but you're going to dig in. You're going to dig into the fish section. You're going to dig in deep. You're going to dig in wide. You're going to dig the fuck in.
There are no clocks on the walls. You have no idea if it's day or night outside.
Yeah.
You don't know what the weather's doing. It doesn't matter. You're there. It's now. Here's the food. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, all together there on the buffet. Make your choice.
I want you to come back to the buffet like one of those people with like 4 plates, okay? And they've got eggs, they've got like a club sandwich, they've got bacon and sausage, and they're coming back to the table. They're just looking for the maple syrup to pour over the whole thing, and they're just gonna sit there and plow into that shit like nobody's business. That's it. You're speechless. You are so hungry from that. You're so hungry from that image.
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking
like,
about that. All that food you just described. It sounded so good.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe it's time for you to hit Vegas and hit the buffet. All right. So anyway, next week we are going to be back covering Side B of Superhits International. J. William Hall, as always. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Dan.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.